Hello, and welcome to our webinar in partnership with Logicalis and IBM. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. In today's webinar, we will be covering IBM FlashSystem and how it can provide your business with recovery from a cyber attack in seconds to minutes. With that, I'll kick it over to our speaker for today's webinar, Ric Halsaver, North America Flash System Specialist from IBM. Ric, welcome.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. As you said, I'm Ric Halsaver. I'm from the IBM storage side. And you might be thinking, gee whiz, what's a storage guy doing talking to me about cybercrime? And the reality of it is storage is where everything bad happens. That is the goal of the bad guys, to get to the point where that stuff is. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take a little bit of time, and we're going to take, I don't know, 4 slides or so, and we're going to talk about IBM storage. And the reason we're going to do that is because it's going to allow you to understand later on when we talk about cyber crime and so forth. It's going to help you understand how our storage fits in and helps your organization. First thing I want to talk about is simplicity. Now, if you were to go to some of the storage websites out there, let's say that you were buying some storage, first thing is you hit somebody, I don't know, Dell.com, for instance. And when you hit that website, what happens is it says, click on something. I'll click on storage. Then it says, perfect. Do you want entry, mid-range, or high-end? And you're like, gee whiz, I don't know. I'm going to click in the middle at mid-range. Click on mid-range. It says, perfect. Which of these families of mid-range products would you like? You're like, geez, oh man, I don't even know if I'm in the right spot or not. But click in the middle perhaps again. And then it says, great. Which of these family members will best fit your needs? That is not simplicity. That is complexity. And the reality of it is, in today's world, we're so fast-paced that we need simplicity. What IBM Storage brings to the table is we have a hardware platform system, one software platform called Storage Virtualized. Storage Virtualized is not just the operating system, GUI, whatever you want to call it, management interface for our flash systems, but it's also the deepest software-defined storage platform in the industry. And here's the beauty. If you were to go to some of the competitive products out there, and you want a little bit of entry, a little bit of mid-range, a little bit of high-end, guess what? You have to buy an entry box, a mid-range box, and a high-end box. And in many of those particular vendors, you'll find out that each one has a different operating system, which means you have to have different people to manage these. Simplicity is one hardware, one software platform, no matter where you are now, no matter where you're going in the future. Entry, mid-range, high-end, going to the cloud, might go to the cloud. You're going to do containers, guess what? One hardware system, one software system. You see some of the other bullets on the bottom. Those are some of the other things that we do that we're good at. But for purposes of this, let's just move on. So let's look at the hardware itself real quick. First thing I want to talk about is performance. Everybody out there uses flash drives, SSDs, if you will. IBM will sell any organization the standard commodity off the shelf flash drives that everybody else sells, or we go one step further. And although it looks exactly like that 2.5-inch drive next to it, our FCM, or flash core module, is 2.5 inch, just like the other one, except it is much, much faster. The fastest flash out there is that you can use data with is roughly about 110 microseconds. We are more than, 130 microseconds. We are nearly 3 times faster than competitors' flash. And you know what? Does speed really matter? Do you really care? You only care about speed and performance when you don't have it. It's nice to have it. And the beauty of it is, it doesn't cost any more with IBM. So you might say, Ric, gee whiz, everybody says they're fast. Tell me how you're faster. So that's what we're going to do. What causes storage to slow down? And believe it or not, even the ability to do RAID or things like compression, encryption, slows it down. So what IBM does on each one of these flash core modules, we put an empty processing chip called an FPGA into every one of these flash core modules. That takes the things that you see in that blue box and does all those performance heating attributes in a chip that works in nanoseconds. Flash doesn't work in nanoseconds. It works the next step up slower, which is microseconds. That means that your organization has the ability to do RAID, compression, encryption, and other features with 0% performance penalty. Now, you might say, gee whiz, why doesn't everybody else just do that? First of all, it's not easy to go out there and manufacture your own product. But if you are to purchase regular SSDs, guess what? Manufacturers like IBM or vendors like IBM, Dell, Pure, HPE, and so forth, we have to pay somewhere between a 30 to 40% uplift. And what that means is that if you make them yourself, like IBM does, we don't have to pay that uplift, and therefore we can afford to put that chip in there. Visually, you can see off to the right, that's what an SSD looks like. Off to the left, you will see that's what a flash core module looks like, and you can see that big silver FPGA there. You can visually even see the difference. Footprint and density is important because guess what? The physical height of the device, if you have remote sites, maybe you're paying for an MSP or what have you, you are typically paying by the height of the device. So we have the smallest footprints or heights in the business. What makes the small footprints? It's our density. Our density is greater than any other flash provider in the marketplace. You might say, who cares? You do. Because when you can put more flash capacity in a smaller space, that means you don't need as many arrays. When you don't need as many arrays, you don't have to have extra support costs, people to manage storage, third-party software costs, and even if you want to meet some of the environmental goals of power consumption and so forth, it helps with that. Lastly, growth and tiering. Many organizations want to mix and match types of performance in the same box, but as you go to explore the offerings out there, you find out that the bulk of them, you cannot put different flavors of performance in the same box. They want you to buy an entry box, a mid-range, and a high box. With IBM, as you can see in the blue, we can mix and match performance either in the same box or off an external enclosure on the backside. So with that being said, let's move on to the last, and that is operating system, if you will. I told you that it was called storage virtualized. Now, we all know what VMware did. It literally came to the market and said, I don't care whose servers you have. We are literally going to virtualize them. And by doing so, we are going to end up with nothing but a pool of processors and cache. We don't see nameplates on the front of IBM, Dell, HP, whomever. It's going to be a pool. Well, IBM Storage Virtualized, hence the name, not only is the operating system, GUI, and so forth, flash systems, but it's the deepest software-defined stack in the business, which also is the VMware for storage. We can virtualize nearly anybody's block storage in the world. And by doing that, that means one GUI for all your block storage. When you have one GUI instead of four, they probably only need one person to manage storage instead of four. What do you do with those other people? You repurpose those individuals into the things that matter. Competitive modern workloads will make your business do more with less. All the knife blades, you see all the things we do. Once we virtualize your storage, if your storage doesn't have the ability to do data reduction, maybe it's disk and it can't compress or it can't do dedupe or whatever, guess what? Once you virtualize the storage, now it's under the storage virtualized interface, you can do data reduction. You can do things like mirroring, tiering, replication, encryption, immutable snapshots, and you will always have that single view and management. So let's look at what it looks like. Think about your organization and what you have going on here. It's a dilemma sometimes because you have an on-premise data center. You might be doing containers, and you're probably doing some sort of clouds. Well, guess what? What if you initiated storage virtualized and your current environment, for instance, maybe you have some NetApp block storage, some HPE, and some Dell. Guess what? 3 different vendors, 3 different operating systems, 3 people to manage. Maybe you have some Microsoft Azure cloud. Maybe you have some AWS cloud. Maybe you're going to do stuff in containers. Believe it or not, we can still use that storage virtualized as a single interface across everything that you see up on the top there and more. What's that mean? That means that not only do you have less people managing storage, but we can provide any of that storage, no matter where it is, on the cloud and containers or on-prem. We can provide them with any of the attributes you see on the bottom right. They will always have those attributes if they currently don't have those. In some cases, you'll find out that the functions and features that we give you with storage virtualized are actually less expensive, perhaps than you're paying maybe at the cloud like AWS or so forth. Now that you understand the storage, let's get into the heart of what we're here to talk about. Every organization around the world, the #1 CEO concern is cybercrime. What's driving cyber threats? Human error. Now, how is it a human error? Because things they're not always as they seem. Look at this picture here. And now look what it really is. This is a gentleman that you can see. It's a hoax. But unfortunately, Phishing attacks are that same thing. Look at the right box on the side and you'll see citibank.com. And believe it or not, the first citibank.com, that is correct. That will take you to the proper URL. The second one, notice the A. That A is out of a Cyrillic alphabet, and they take that website, and then if you click on that one with that one single letter differently, you will go to their website, and now your organization is hacked. Again, not always as it seems. First thing you can do is make sure that you're constantly educating your employees of what the bad guys are doing, and IBM can help you with that. So from a cyber defense, what is the very first thing that your organization can do to protect yourself? Encryption. Believe it or not, almost 50% of major workloads in the Inc. 500, Inc. 5000 don't encrypt their major workloads. Now they encrypt all the rest of them typically, but their major workloads, they don't always encrypt them simply because they cannot take the performance hit that's going to happen when you use encryption. We talked about that FPGA on the FlashCore module. Guess what? We are the people out there that can do full-on AES 256 FIPS 140-3 encryption with 0% performance penalty, which means now any organization can run the latest and greatest encryption with no performance penalty, to include quantum safe encryption. By 2030, quantum computers will be able to breach the current encryption algorithms. Why wouldn't an organization want to be prepared for that in case the bad guys actually are faster in doing that before 2030? It's all free. It comes with our flash systems. Now, why would you want to make sure you're encrypting? Because the bad guys, they steal personal information all the time. They used to sell it on the dark web, but now they've got even smarter. They want to ransom your organization. And of the ransomware attacks out there, 28%, of all attacks, 28% are ransomware. But here's the ironic number. They get your ransom money 83% of the time. And then they come back and say, gee whiz, I forgot to tell you, we do have all this personal information that we took. And just for a measly, whatever, $500,000, we can give that back to you too. 83% of ransomware attacks are double extortion. So it doesn't just stop at the first ransom. So you want encryption to safeguard that. A bunch of stuff's popping up on the screen. What I want you to look at is that red circle, 280 days. That's the average time that the bad guys are in the network before they're detected. 3/4 of a year. What are they doing? Their main goal is to get to your backups. 2 years ago, they would come to an organization and say, hey, give me the money or else. And your organization would probably say, you know what? I'm not doing that. I have a backup copy. The bad guys, you think they're not getting onto that? So what they do now is their target is the backup copies first. Once they breach the backup copies and encrypt those, guess what they're going to do? They're going to start to encrypt your production workloads, and then they're going to ransom you. What are you going to recover from? So the second thing that we can do aside from encryption is to make every single thing that we do on-prem, at remote sites like clouds and so forth, make the snapshots, the point-in-time copies that we all use, make them in an immutable state, which means they cannot be written to, altered, or deleted. The keyword is written. If we can make those snapshots so that they cannot be written to, the bad guys cannot write encryption code to those snapshots. Mutable copies are the first step. Our immutable capability, it was all invented by IBM about 6.5 to 7 years ago. Now everybody in the industry has it, because why wouldn't you? Let me show you what it looks like. We call it safeguarded copy. Basically, we have production data. We make an immutable snapshot so it can't be written to, altered, or deleted. But here's where we differentiate ourselves from many of the competitors out there. Instead of making that immutable copy and then dropping it off to your secondary storage off-site, we make a fenced-off repository on the physical array itself. We can also drop stuff off to the cloud and so forth, but if you want fast recovery, there's nothing faster than coming off the same array where that data is. The overhead to do this is roughly 15%. So if you want to do this repository on the array, you have 100 terabytes of data, you're going to have a need for 115 terabytes. I can tell you right now, that's a couple $1,000s. We're not talking about a lot of money here. We make that repository, then we put the snapshots in there in an immutable state. Now, if anything goes wrong, the current SIMs that you have by your application providers and so forth, the SIMs are going to realize, okay, is anything wrong? If there's anything wrong at all, it's going to go back to our previous copy. And as you can see by the green arrow to your left, it is going to restore that into production, that last no good copy. This is immutable copies. Here's the deal. IBM was first to come out with these, but we didn't stop here. Every one of our competitors has stopped immutable copies because they feel this is the total answer. I think you'll see here in a couple seconds. Nah, we need to go further. This is not from backup. This is from the physical array itself. So the word cyber resilience, Amanda mentioned that earlier. What is resilience? If you're like most people, including myself, not all that long ago, when somebody said cyber resilience, you know what I think of? Cybersecurity. It's got to be the same thing, right? Now, cybersecurity is about keeping the bad guys out. Throw up some walls, put some barbed wire up there, keep them out. That's not cyber resilience. You might say, well, is it disaster recovery? No. Disaster recovery is having your data in a different geographical location so that if there are floods, power outages, fires, whatever it might be, they're in a different geographical area. And guess what? It won't get to your data because of that. Backup and recovery. Again, good guess, but backup is just that. It is a secondary copier of your data that is somewhere so that if you lose everything you got, you have your backup stuff. What cyber resilience is, it is that I cannot believe it, but we got hit. And how fast can we recover? Cyber resilience, the word resiliency simply means the ability to recover fast. So data resilience, cyber resilience is not about getting hit. It's about how fast can your organization get up and running so that you are making money and operating. So now your data is under attack. What is the only thing, the one word that matters? It's time. Nothing else matters but the time that you can get the business up and running. How fast? Now, what are the pieces and parts that make a fast recovery? The first thing any organization has to do is understand the two types of data that you need to understand so that you know what data you need to recover. There's two types of data, full company, and it's just that. It's all the data your company has, every single piece of everything you have. You see the picture there. But you know what? How long would it take your organization after you got hit to recover all that data? And the answer is weeks, maybe months. You don't want that. The second type of data, as you can see by the picture, is considerably smaller. It's called minimum viable company or MVC data. Minimum viable company data is the only the data that your organization needs to recover and be up and running as fast as possible. Now, you see the guy on the crutches. He's limping. Your company, running as a minimum viable company, will be limping a little bit. Your employees might say, gee whiz, the system's slow today. But you know what? You're up and running. You are making money. And that's where your organization wants to be. They don't want to be shut off. They want to be up and running in that minimum viable company state. So and the people at your organization, you need to understand, you need to figure out what your minimum viable company is. And I'll tell you a story. I was on with a company who runs exactly what we've talked about so far and some more. Running our IBM solution, they got hit at roughly 1:30 in the afternoon, and they said it was seamless. Everything came up and running. It was perfect, just like nothing happened almost. The very next day, however, at 11:30 in the morning, they realized, gee whiz, there's nothing going on. What's happening? In their minimum viable company, they forgot to put their login credentials. No one, whether external or internal, could log into the system. So you start to see what encompasses minimum viable company data, the data that you need to be up and running. So minimum viable company is a starter where Logicalis can actually reach out to your customer, reach out to you and talk about how they can help you figure out what your minimum viable company is. And that's what it's all about. Minimum viable company is so important. So let's look at a physical attack. Now, this is a financial client in the Midwest, and she got hit. And the reason she's talking to me is because she needed to do something about it. But I was so intrigued about how, the implications. I said to her, tell me what happened. And she said, well, Rick, mass confusion. We wondered what happened. Where did it happen? When did it happen? Who did it? What are we going to do? Where do we start? Why don't we just recover from the backups? And I'm sure that you're probably thinking the same thing. Why don't we just recover from the backups? But when's the last time that your organization tested and validated the data that's at that backup site or wherever you have that data? I looked at this and said, this is who, what, where, and when, and why. This takes time. to figure out what's going on. And if you think you can just jump in and start to recover off of backups anyway, take MGM hit back last fall. When they got hit, they tried to do exactly that. They said, no, we're going to recover from our backups. They recovered from malicious infected data, and it set them back 8.5 hours. No company on earth wants to be minutes set back. It set them back 8.5 hours. Who, what, where, when, and why is important. Now, if you're like most organizations that we speak with, this is what your this situation typically looks like. Hopefully you have immutable copies. You have production data, you make those immutable snapshots, more than likely they're somewhere else. They're on the cloud, an MSP site, remotely, or whatever. You put those into some sort of a repository in an immutable state, and then boom comes. Boom's never good. What happens at this point? We just talked about on the previous slide. You have to figure out the who, what, where, when, and why. You cannot skip that part, because if you do, you could be recovering from malware infested data. Once that is figured out, which can take days sometimes, then is your data tested and validated? No. Well, guess what? We got to start everything up. We got to test the data and validate it. That takes time. Again, could be days. Once that is up and running, we're ready to roll, right? Now we are going to recover from that site. The problem is most organizations can only recover about 10 terabytes of data in a 24-hour period. If you have 100 terabytes of data, do the math. It's 10 days. This is why it's so important to talk about the things that we talked about previously. We have to test and validate data. We have to make sure that we have minimum viable company data, only the data that will keep us up and running fast. So let's talk about what probably those of you on watching this video are thinking about. Well, we have RPOs and we have RTOs. And I will ask you, are they really as valid as they were even a year and a half ago? Why would I say that? Well, how confident you are that your backup's safe? When was the last time you tested it? Are you confident there's no dormant malware, just like with MGM? Do you even have an isolated testing forensics environment, a clean room? Have you set up a minimum viable company? Here's the deal. We're good, right? Well, not so fast, because the new number one target for the bad guys is your backups. If they encrypt your backups, tell me what an RPO or an RTO does for your organization. And I think we will all agree that, well, at that point, yeah, there's nothing to recover from. If you turn on the news tonight, you see that organizations have paid the ransom. Why? Because they had nothing to recover from. So RPOs and RTOs might not be quite as valid as we give them credit for. Cyber Vault. We talked about immutable copies. Well, are immutable copies enough? And the reality of it is no. Our competitors have stopped there, but no, it's not enough. So what IBM has done is come up with a methodology of how an organization should treat the data to make sure that they don't get infected. Do your production data. Have that repository like we talked about before. It's all coming off the array, which is above the blue box. However, now we're going to initiate a clean room. What is a clean room? It is literally a fenced off area, again, that has storage rich servers in it that have your SOARs, your security software loaded into them. And by the way, everything we're talking about today, do you have to use IBM, Sims, and so? Heck, absolutely not. You use what you have, what you feel comfortable with, what works. Take that clean room, put your security information in there, and here's what happens. We write the production data at 6 a.m. We then send it a copy to the clean room. The clean room gives it a green check mark. Yes, the data is good. At noon, same thing. Data is good. However, at 6 o'clock, look what happens. I don't know what that red bug is, but I can tell you it's not good. How can we recover? We literally can recover right now from the primary array, the fastest array. We can recover your 12 o'clock copy right now. That means your business is up and running in seconds to minutes, because the recovery isn't coming across the internet, is it? It's not coming from a remote site. The recovery is coming from the primary array to a clean copy that was tested and validated at noon. Do you have to do it every 6 hours? Absolutely not. But we recommend that you do it at a minimum every 24 hours. It isn't a lot of cost to do this. Storage rich servers are not expensive. The reality of it is here, you can see that this is where your organization wants to be. You want to recover fast with tested and validated data. And we talked about human error. We can automate this using artificial intelligence so that once you set this up and you got the way you want it, human hands don't have to touch it again. And that will eliminate things in the past. I told you this was a methodology called CyberVault. Guess what? I want a product. Our product is called Storage Sentinel. What we did in Storage Sentinel is we looked at applications by themselves. We started in healthcare with Epic, went to SAP HANA and Oracle. We made the CyberVault mentality so that it was aimed towards the application itself. Why? Because if I have just an Epic Storage Sentinel scenario with CyberVault methodology, do I have to have a bunch of code in there for SAP and Oracle and SQL Server and VMware and all the other applications out there in the world so it works with everything? No. I'm worried about time of recovery. What is the fastest way you can recover? It's if the code is only made for your application. And that's exactly what IBM did. Currently, we have those three. We also have VMware SQL Server coming up here like literally anytime now. And we have a whole bunch more applications coming after that. This is bringing your organization what you need to recover fast. Now, what is the competitor's recommendation for cyber resilience? They just announced back in, I believe, April, they said, you know what, we can do 68 million immutable copies. And I got to be honest with you, we can't. We do like 56,000, I believe. How do you do 68 million? You have to have a 4-way cluster at one of the most expensive arrays in the world to do that. And at the end of the day, guys, if you get hit, do you want to go through 68 million immutable snapshots, or would you rather go through a couple hundred? And I think we know that. So we are going to now turn the tables. We turn it around with the Storage Sentinel CyberVault beyond immutable copies where everybody else stopped. And now we're going to turn the tables again. What if you could do detection as the writes were literally taking place to the media itself? Would you need millions of snapshots? No. And what if there's no additional cost? Flash systems come with this capability all baked in already. Now, how do you do detection? Your organization does it just like everybody else. It's like backing up the car. All the detection is done in the rear view mirror after it's written, after it's probably been sent to the remote site. We all have this or had this in older cars. Maybe you have a newer car. Guess what? You have a bird's eye view. This is where IBM's malware detection is right now. We literally have a bird's eye view where we see the data coming into the media. We see it as it's passing through the media, and of course, we see it behind us. Let's show you what that is. We have a machine learning front end on our flash systems. Our flash core modules are inside with that FPGA. That FPGA has been loaded with ransomware threat detection on the FPGA, so there's no overhead, no performance issues. That machine learning front end learns what your organization deems as normal. How many writes do you have at 11 o'clock? How many do you usually have at 3 o'clock? What's your compression ratios? All the things that have to do with storage. If we see anything that's abnormal, we will flag that data. We then take that and we send it up to our monitoring cloud called Storage Insights, which is comprised of subject matter experts by both security and storage, but most importantly, one of the largest ethical hacking organizations in the world is called X-Force. X-Force puts tens of millions of things into a database every week about what the bad guys are doing. When this anomaly or possible anomaly goes up to the Storage Insights, it's matching against that database to see what it is. And if it catches it and affirms that, yes, it's bad, guess what? It will initiate a playbook, and that playbook will deal with the issue right now. If you are using our FlashCore modules, you as a customer will be notified in seconds of possible anomaly detection. So it's all about time, guys. Now, let's talk about how this physically works from a visual perspective again. Production data goes down into the FlashCore module on a flash system. That FPGA that we started out the presentation with, that again provides this, everything we're going to talk about faster than the flash system is. So there's no overhead, you lose no performance. The FPGA acts like a traffic cop. If it sees that the data is good, guess what? It will make that immutable snapshot, drop it off into the flash system, and then it will put it in that clean room. After it clones a snapshot of that, puts in the clean room, and now you can test and validate that data. What if the data is bad? Well, first thing it does, make an immutable copy. Obviously, we don't want it to scatter any further, right? Malicious activity is then sent to our monitoring cloud, Insights Pro, as I said, and it will notify your existing SIM and SOAR that they need to initiate the playbook for whatever it is that's been found. What's the beauty of that? Not only are you notified as a customer, but you're notified in seconds to minutes and you're up and running in seconds to minutes. So what is your benefit of this ransomware threat detection we're talking about? The faster it's detected, the less data that's affected. That's what we all want. And when you have less data affected, the faster that not only can be acted upon, but the faster your organization will be up and running. Let me show you real quick how this works. This is without data resilience. A bug comes in, starts to encrypt the backups. Once it encrypts those backups, guess what? What are we going to recover from? They will now start to demand the ransom as they are literally encrypting your production workloads. This is what happens, and this is why it's so imperative that we do something about this. We do not want your organization to be in this pickle, if you will. What are you going to recover from? There is nothing to recover from. This is why people pay the ransom. Now, if you bring what we just talked about, this cyber vault effect, what if we could do what we just talked about doing on-prem with your on-array? What if we could do that at your backup or remote site? That is called Storage Defender. And we bring all the pieces we just talked about. I'm not going to waste your time going through here, but we bring all that together with a single dashboard. But you know what's missing? We are missing the security piece at the data layer itself. And that's what you're missing as well. What we're going to do is we're going to bring all this together with our product called Data Defender, which literally does the exact same thing we just talked about, except it does it across all your data. It comes from a single dashboard called the Defender dashboard, which automates every single thing, which also allows you to plug in with your security operations system as well. Your SIMs, your SOARs, everything can be done from that first dashboard. So this is what you want. You want ease. Now let's bring this back and let's take a look at how this all operates. This is a little confusing slide, I'm going to be honest with you, but look down in the bottom left, you will see that we're going to start to do the inline data corruption detection. We're using that machine learning. We're looking for any possible anomalies. Now, a bug is going to appear here real quick. So let's look at what happens. We're doing deep scanning off to the top right. So that is our clean room. Now what's going to happen is you're going to see the bug coming into the production workloads. It's going to start to infiltrate. Now look down at the inline data corruption detection down the bottom left, and you will see that we have detected that something has gotten in. We send that to your SIM and SOAR playbook requesting action. The action simply is isolate the workload, let the SIMs and SOARs do what they need to do from the playbook itself. And now if you look up at the top, you'll see that we have isolated that workload. And now we're going to recover a clean copy. Look off to your right. You'll see that we're doing it. We did a deep scan on the first or the last known good copy. It was not good. So we went back to the 1800 or 6 p.m. copy, and we found that that data was good. Now we can recover from that 6 p.m. I'm sorry, from the 3 p.m. Mutable snap. And guess what? Now we go production wide, and production is up and running. And now we are doing business as usual. Time frame, seconds to minutes. This is where every organization wants to be. What does this Storage Defender address? Well, if you look at what you have right now, you have data security, but data security doesn't do anything for recovery. If you look at data protection is cool, but it doesn't help you avoid the attacks. What Data Defender does is it rounds the circle so that we give you the best of both across your entire infrastructure, whether it's on-prem, on cloud, or at some sort of a secondary site. Almost done here. Businesses that assess what their risks are before data breaches. In other words, they're figuring out where they're vulnerable and where they're not, typically save around $2 million on average if they get hit. Is your company prepared? We all know the National Institute of Standards and Technology framework. IBM and Logicalis will offer your organization, for simply watching this video, the ability to see where you have strengths and gaps and weaknesses with what you're currently doing. It will all be according to the NIST framework. And here's how it works. Exploratory session to see who's going to be on this call. And I'll tell you a story. We were on literally at this point right here, exploratory session, And somebody asked a question from IBM, and the security guy said, no, security doesn't do that. The storage guys do that. And the storage guy said, gee whiz, we thought the security guys did that. We had not even started yet, and they already found a glaring vulnerability. So I will ask that in this exploratory session, that you have a representative, at least one, from each security and storage, because they literally have to come together nowadays. We have 128 questions. There is no software load. There isn't, all these tricky questions. What's your code level, firmware level, how many, how much cache, blah, blah, blah. It's 128 questions. It takes about an hour to an hour and a half to answer. The answers are literally yes, no, and partially. Those are the answers. Once we have that, we run it through that database I told you about. The X-Force databases will subject matter experts. It takes a week or two. We provide you the final overview and report. And here's the deal. The NIST framework you saw on the previous slide, was color-coded. Look at the color coding here. Anyone in your organization, CEO, CFO, anybody that does or does not have any knowledge of IT will be able to read this and understand where you have vulnerabilities and how you need to act upon them. I'll give you another piece here. There is a major software drink company worldwide. Everybody knows who they are. They took this test and they found themselves to be 42% prepared. For the next 2 weeks, they put their smartest guys on this. They retook it and literally gained exactly 20%. They were 62% prepared, and literally the next day they got hit. Were they mad? Yes, but they went to their IBM architect and said, we cannot thank you enough for decreasing our vulnerability by 20%. That's what Logicalis can do and IBM can do for your organization by doing this. What are your steps to success to add this to round this out? Always assume that you're being breached, always, because when your guards are up, things happen. Design your plan, execute it, test it. How do you even figure out what the plan is? That cyber resiliency assessment test we call CRAT, that's your first step. This is not an on-off switch. You don't just flip a switch and everything works. You have to take those baby steps. You have to encrypt your data. You need to make immutable snapshots. You need to bring your storage and your security teams together, because at the end of the day, they all have the same goal. They want to keep stuff safe on the storage. And you want to be up and fast and running as fast as possible. Now, with that being said, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this video. But more importantly, I hope that you will reach out to your Logicalis reps and talk to them about this. It's super important that your organization is not on the 6 o'clock news tomorrow night. Thank you.
We'd like to thank you all again for joining us for today's webinar hosted by Logicalis and IBM. We hope you found this webinar to be helpful and informative, and thank you to our speaker again, Ric, for sharing his knowledge with us today. To explore more content, please visit the Logicalis IBM Content Hub at logicalis-hub.com/IBM. Or if you have any more questions, just like Ric said, please contact your Logicalis representative. Thank you all again and have a wonderful rest of your day.